that. Last but definitely not least, we have our last group who is presenting. So let's give a round of applause to Michelle, Myles, and Arnulfo.
Picture a man who stood up for what he believed in, no matter the consequences. He spoke the truth not for the North or for the South, but for the good of all man. First, we would like to discuss what led up to the speech and the history behind it all. Second, what the speech was about and who was involved. And thirdly, the significance of the speech that Charles Sumner gave on May 1856. Charles Sumner stated in his speech, "Seldom in the history of nations has such a question been presented. Tariffs, army bills, navy bills, and land bills are important, but all belong to the course of ordinary legislation. Grant them or deny them in greater or less degree, and you will inflict no shock. The machinery of government will continue to move. The state will not cease to exist."
I'm going to be talking about the history before he gave his speech. And when he gave his speech, the country was basically torn apart in two. You had the North and the South. And it was, what his speech was before it, it was about the Kansas and Nebraska. They were territories. And from the Kansas and Nebraska territories, the South wanted it to be a slave state and the North wanted it to be a free state. And with it being, which the North wanted, they wanted to raise the tariff, a homestead law, a transcontinental railroad, and non-extension. They wanted to have slavery die and kill it by just leaving it alone, and hopefully it would go away. In comes President James Buchanan. The South said that if you do not elect a Democratic president, the South will succeed. And so they elected James Buchanan, but it only postponed the war. It didn't stop it. And in comes Governor Sarah Palin. This is the modern day William Seward. And William Seward, he was the man that was supposed to be president during Abraham Lincoln in 1860. The Republican bosses in Chicago, they wanted Seward, they did not want Seward to become the president because of Seward's folly. Basically what Seward's folly is, Seward was the Secretary of State and he purchased Alaska for $7 million. And everybody thought that was the most stupidest idea in the whole world. And so they said, why would we want this man to lead our country in the midst of a civil war? So in comes Honest Abe Lincoln, and he became our president. And that's up there.
We're talking about the speech now, known as the Crime Against Kansas. And basically, Sumner's presented the speech at the Senate floor in 1856. It was regarding whether Kansas should be admitted into the Union as a free or a slave state. And in the speech, he identified two culprits, Stephen Douglas from Illinois and Andrew Butler from South Carolina. He described Douglas as a noisome, squat, and nameless animal, not a proper model for an American senator. And Andrew Butler, he wasn't president at the time, but Andrew Butler considered himself a man of chivalry, and he charged him with taking a mistress who thought ugly to others is always lovely to him, though polluted in the sight of the world, is chaste in his sight, the harlot slavery. And I mean, this really angered Preston Brooks. He was a family member from South Carolina. And 3 days after the speech, after Congress was adjourned, he walked up in the room and beat him with a cane. He just came up behind him and beat him. And he justified himself as, if Summers believed, if he believed Summers to be a gentleman, he might have challenged him to a duel, but instead he chose a light cane of the type used to discipline unruly dogs. Well, after he brutally beat him, he just walked out of the room and onlookers didn't even stop him. He wasn't even arrested. But overnight, they both became Sumners, and Preston Brooks became heroes in their respective regions. Brooks because he was fighting for slavery, and Sumners because he was fighting against it. But basically, the nation was suffering from a breakdown of recent discourse, and this event symbolized, the tumble downward and eventually led to the Civil War.
The reason why we chose this speech is because it was powerful. Sumner brought out anger, aggression, and passion from the American people. His words influenced people to react in dangerous and hateful ways, but it also inspired people to believe in more unified society, encouraging people to take action now. Some of the things Sumner portrays in his speech are the way he presents his beliefs and values through the words he uses. Those very same words not only got the point across, but it brought slavery to the minds of the people on a moral level, on both right and wrong.
When he gave this speech, it was in the time of civil war, of civil unrest, and his words basically caused the start of, or progressed it even further, of one of the greatest wars in history. And it's what he said that spoke to the people. And it rattled everybody's cages and made them think about slavery, and progressed the war.